activities at the counties are not in the best of state. And we cross over to the next topic of discussion, and we've all witnessed the xenophobic attacks that have played out, and this is not the first time that this is playing out. And probably these attacks sort of prompt the need to assess the possible gaps associated with the effects of xenophobic attacks, because then the impact of xenophobia or maybe Afrophobia on the economy just in South Africa and technically on the rest of Africa could be as huge as we would not even imagine. But then again, we're not looking at that as it stands today. Of course, this has altered the activities in matters tourism if you are to go to South Africa today. But then again, what does it speak of Africa at large? And I think that's what we want to discuss this morning, even as we take a look at the great direction that Africa wanted to take, or maybe is working towards taking, that is a free African trade. And very many countries sort of expressed goodwill in terms of ensuring that this is a success. Maybe at some point, of course, Buhari is the only one who did not attend this particular meeting. But even as we hope for this, sincerely speaking, when we witness such events, are we likelihood to get to that level as Africa?
You see, the problem that we've had as Africa all along is that there are some countries within Africa that feel that they do not belong to Africa.
Yeah.
They belong elsewhere. We've seen this happening in the northern region. Countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, feeling like they're more closer to Europe than they are to Africa. Egypt actually is a member of a bloc away from Africa. South Africa also faces the same challenges, and I was thinking about it when I was coming. The biggest problem South Africans have is that they're not mature enough democratically. They are toddlers because they only got independence in 1994.
Right.
So they're only 25 years old. So the young boys and girls who are fighting and looting shops are probably people who were born post-independence.
Right.
So they still don't know what it feels like to have a united country. They still feel like the issues that they found after independence is what is affecting them. But I can tell you, when you speak to people out there, they'll tell you how lazy these people are. They're not hardworking. I mean, across Africa, we have had some form of integration. We have Ugandans in our country, we have Southern Sudanese, we have Nigerians, and it happens across all nations. But we found a way of people working in a way that you don't even notice that this person is a Nigerian. Because you're hardworking, you're doing your own things, and you move on. But if you get to a situation where we are in South Africa, where you feel that you are not able to eat in your house because of your neighbor who is a foreigner, it's very sad.
Right.
And it also questions the issues of integration that we've been pushing for in Africa. Will it ever really happen? Because when the kind of discussions that you've been seeing from the leaders in South Africa paints a picture of a country that is not interested really with being part of Africa, and allowing Africans to be able to integrate with them. And something else that the South Africans have to know, when they had issues before independence, it is the neighboring countries
that came into
that hosted them. Zimbabwe and the rest. They actually hosted them. They assisted them to get to where they are. If these countries were bad enough, they could not have accommodated them that time. And they also have to see how the South Africans themselves have also moved and stayed in other countries so comfortably that they're not being threatened. And for us, we want the Kenyan government to come out strongly and condemn this. And of course, they need to cite the South African High Commission in Kenya to be able to give us answers. Because when you talk of 2 Kenyans, it's just a number, but those are 2 Kenyans. Kenyans who are hardworking, who are in South Africa legally, who are doing business, and they have been attacked. Shops have been looted. People are actually wondering, what next? Should we go back to our country? And when you see the kind of reaction that has come out of Nigeria, if these issues are not addressed, it will spread across Africa. And it will be a country against another country in Africa. We should actually be united against foreigners. Foreigners who are Chinese, who are coming in to colonize us. That should be a common discussion. So our discussion should not be a Nigerian staying in South Africa or a Southern Sudan resident staying in Kenya. It should be about the Chinese or the foreigners who are coming to colonize us, not people who are coming to work with us. So we really hope that in the spirit of integration that the African Union has been talking about every day, we can be able to look beyond these small issues like the issues that now are affecting South Africa to try and understand that an African is your brother.
Right.
Whether he's coming from the west or from the north. They should be welcome. That's why we are pushing for free movement of persons in Africa.
In Africa.
So that you don't need a visa to visit an African country. And that is the only way we can be able to grow our economy as Africa.
One of the biggest complaints that we'll always have in touring, Africa is that it is very hard to get a visa to cross over to South Africa. Very hard. It's hectic. And equally, we acknowledge that xenophobia is more in times of economic and financial distress at that particular point. So the question then would be, has South Africa critically analyzed where this supposed fear comes from, supposed fear of fellow Africans is coming for, or maybe there's more than meets the eye. So before you answer that, let's listen into what President Ramaphosa had to say about these attacks. Technically, of course, he would condemn them, but how genuine is he in addressing this issue that has been recurring over years?
The women of our country are feeling so insecure, and rightly so. They are feeling that their lives are not well regarded and respected in our country. We cannot have a situation like that where women in our country have a sense of security. So we will be redoubling the efforts that we are making.
All right, could there be more than meets the eye? Because equally, there's that aspect that the government is to blame for the levels of unemployment. The government is to blame for how much they've not worked towards ensuring that there's the best of, or maybe there's stability in the economy of South Africa. And maybe the South Africans with this frustration are now leveling it on the foreigners who are there and probably are doing good as it is.
I'll still talk about the toddler kind of behavior that is coming out from the South Africans. And it's right from the leaders. Whatever Ramaphosa is saying now is not the same things that he said after he was elected. He talked strongly against foreigners. Foreigners in the country who don't have papers, who have taken over businesses, who are selling drugs. That is what he talked against during his election victory speech.
Right.
And that is what now is being translated to the kind of killings that we are seeing currently and looting. So South Africa is a developed country, per se. It's an advanced economy, and it is upon their people to be able to look for a way to fit into the economy. Because the challenges that a country like South Africa has, most of the countries in Africa have, whereby you look at your economy and you say, fine, we've really grown, but you cannot be able to attach that kind of growth to the individuals. People still live in the villages and they're very poor, the opportunities are little, and people are struggling. But you see, the blame should be on your government. And I was engaging someone on social media yesterday. I told her, if you're talking about Nigerians selling drugs and bribing the police, you should not blame the Nigerian.
It's actually the
you
government.
You should blame the police. Because if the police were not taking the bribes, then these things will not be happening. So you will be quick to blame a weak person who is a foreigner, yet forgetting that you voted in a government which has the powers to be able to implement the laws in such a way that the people will come from outside the countries to settle in the country, work there legally, and they don't actually take up the positions and jobs of the locals. So they need a balance as a country that as they grow to the levels they're growing now, they need to pull along everyone. Because if it's 10 people, and it's the same thing that happens in our families, if you are 5 brothers and 2 sisters, and 2 brothers become so successful, and you've not pulled along your other brothers, you will end up in a situation whereby your brothers will steal from you. Because they'll feel that you never cared for them when you were growing. So you have to look for a way of pulling along everyone. And that is what Nigeria needs, South Africa needs to do as a country. To look for a way of growing the economy, but growing it with everyone. So that people feel like we also have a place. We can be able to get food, we can be able to get good education and health, so we cannot blame the foreigners. If that does not happen, then these people who are left behind will always find somewhere to vent their anger. And currently, they're venting their anger on foreigners.
Are we trying to tell the colonizers or the foreigners, so to speak, or the whites, so to speak, that indeed we are better off with them on board than them away. Because when you look at South Africa, it has really grown. We're talking about them having, independence just the other day. Then you'd ask yourself, what really could have informed that growth, that surpasses what we witness in other African countries that gained independence years ago? Maybe it's because the foreigners were on ground for the longest of time possible, and they developed South Africa to the point that it is today. And now that they've left it for them, they're not able to handle it. And technically, what is happening across other African countries?
Sometimes what happens with our people is that they care so much about freedom than growth.
Right.
And that is what happened in South Africa. That the country was doing so well, but the natives felt that they did not have the freedom, they did not have the democracy. And that is what is critical in people's lives. If you look at a country like Libya, it was the same situation. They had a president who was taking good care of them, but they felt that they did not have freedom. They did not have the democratic space to be able to elect their leaders and all those things. So, and again, even if we were to work with the foreigners will help you grow the economy to tremendous levels. But they cannot be able to help you to pull you up so that you can be able to enjoy the benefits. Remember, they'll want to crush you so that they can be able to stay for longer. And that is where South Africans cried for independence. The issues are the issues that have happened post-independence. How has the country and the presidents who have taken over from that time brought together their people? How have they spread the opportunities? Do we have a developed nation, not just in the urban centers, but in the rural areas? Do we have industries going to areas whereby people can be able to get employment and all those things? Do we still have people living in slums who cannot be able to afford meals? Those are the things that have to be addressed. If you continue boasting of good infrastructure, good roads and the rest, and your people are dying of hunger, you cannot be proud and say you have a country that has developed. It's really difficult.
All right. Some of the South Africans are saying that really it's not so much hate against fellow Africans, but they are worried about the level of unemployment, which stands at above 50% in SA. And of course, they're actually even worried at how much the country has stopped maybe or is actually stealing from their very own citizens, technically of what we witnessed right here, the question of corruption and everything. So they say in the event that the government will stop that, then they will be talking of a different thing. They will be having other fellow Africans coming on board and addressing this. So they're just ranting, which again is also not a justification as one would argue. But before we address this aspect of the government and what they should do on how they should re-strategize to grow the economy, the regional blocs, African Union, we've seen how much EU has actively been involved on the question of Brexit because they know the economic impact that would come along with this. What are the regional blocs? What is African Union doing towards addressing the economic issues of Africa and integration at large?
I think the blocks that we have in Africa are not as strong as what we see in Europe and the developed countries. And our blocks were not formed with the mindset of developing the economies within the blocks. We have the East African Common Protocol, but we don't care about it. And it was a very good write-up and a very good agreement, but we don't care about it. We have not implemented it fully. So our blocks were more political, so that you feel that you belong to a place. That's why a country like Tanzania is in SADC and it's in the EAC. So, it's just something that is more amorphous, does not really help you. But if you could see if the SADC leaders will come together and condemn and look for a way of imposing sanctions on South Africa, then the South African will come up and say, look, we have to do something. But SADC is not as strong as we think. The countries there probably fear South Africa more because it's the only developed economy in that area. So they cannot be able to do probably much. They can only sit and watch, and we've not seen them talking strongly against that. So until we can be able to achieve economic integration to the level of EU with a common currency and, we remove all the tariffs so that countries feel that they fully benefit from the other, and then you feel that there's a big threat. If one country collapses, you are bound to be affected, then we can see more active involvement of the blocs. But at the moment, they're more political and nothing much is coming out of them.
All right, let's take a short breather. We'll be right back to wind up on this particular discussion, because then it's very important that we address the global impact of it, because I'm taking a look at, yes, we could be having this effects or impacts on the economy of South Africa, then of course it proceeds to the rest of Africa and globally in terms of course, the performance of the currencies, the rand itself, one of the best performing currencies across Africa. But then again, what then would it mean on the aspect also of tourism? Right after this break. Welcome back to the broadcast. Of course, today we have some grace period, and I think we're thankful for that as we proceed with this candid discussion. And before we went for break, wanted us to address this question of what then is the global impact of this. We're looking at the performance of the currencies, the rand itself, and generally all the currencies in Africa. Like I said earlier on, the rand well performing amongst all the other currencies that we have on board. You know, in comparison to the likes of the shillings, probably that's what sort of places South Africa as one of the best of Africa's countries as it stands today. So globally, what then does this read, or where does it place South Africa economically and Africa at large?
No, of course, the first thing is that the South African economy will be hit heavily because not only do they rely on what they produce locally, they also rely on the investments outside the country. And South Africa as a nation, because they are developed to that level, they have done big investments outside the country. Look at ABSA, look at MTN, look at SuperSport. Those are big investments coming out of South Africa, and it's spread across Africa. And we've already seen the effect it has with MTN closing in Nigeria because of the attacks. So you will see the rand being affected because, of course, the confidence will go low. People, if it extends to a level that people have to start fleeing the country, direct investments will, of course, be affected because people will want to close down their industries and move them elsewhere where they feel they're safe. And that is in the long run. And the economy will be affected because even those jobs that the South Africans are crying for may not be there. Because some of the investments in South Africa are not investments by South Africans, but by foreigners who have invested in South Africa. And if they actually leave or they move part of the investments to another country, that will affect not only their currency, but the economy. And the prospects of them getting those employments will also be affected greatly. Look at Zimbabwe. And look at what happened in Zimbabwe. They expelled the whites from the country. They thought they could be able to take over the farms. Look at their currency. Look at their economy. It's on its knees.
They're not even making use of the farms.
They are not even making use of the farms because they are lazy. They got used to the Mzungu with the kind of technology that they had brought in. So that is the kind of fear that Cyril Ramaphosa should be having. And he should look for a way of quickly trying to instill confidence by crushing these people who are fighting foreigners so that he can be able to have the confidence of foreign investors in the country so that they can't leave. Because I know so many of my friends who live in South Africa and they have invested heavily in South Africa. Some in mining, some in tourism investment
sectors,
and the rest. So if they leave, they will be affected. Because South Africans as people, and when you look at them, they come out to be people who are very lazy, that who may not be able to actually run such businesses. And if they can't run those businesses, they cannot be able to create the job opportunities that the poor people are crying for because those people want jobs. And that will, of course, affect the economy.
Okay. All right. African investment is crucial, and you've talked about that. And every day, we're talking about an Africa where we'll encourage each other or fellow Africans to come and invest. And we've seen how much these investors have been frustrated. Sometimes it's way easier for a person abroad or, far from Africa or maybe away from the continent coming into the country and getting a chance to invest. It's way easier for them in comparison to African investors. The likes of Dangote will tell you that, it's not been easy investing in Africa to the point at which they are today. So what does this then mean for the African investor, when we witness this? So is it going to be a clear shutdown where we'll be talking of, Kenyans just invest in Kenya, Tanzanians just invest in Tanzania, South Africa sticks to South Africa? And where will it place us, when we take a look at the SDG goals and equally the 2030 vision that we have?
No, with the kind of global economy we currently have, and with the technology, of course, taking center stage, you cannot become successful by investing in your own country. And it should be easy for an African investor to invest in an African country. I mean, why is it possible that a Chinese can come thousands of miles, set up a construction company, and become successful. Yet, a local cannot be able to do that. Or a local cannot be able to move to Uganda or to Tanzania or to Malawi and invest and become successful. It's because of how blacks view fellow blacks. We don't want to interact with each other. And yet, we all suffered from the same colonial tendencies and all those things.
Right.
So we have to look for a way of supporting each other. And the whole idea behind having a common market in Africa is to try and see whether the businesses that are established in South Africa can extend their footprints to other countries. Businesses established in Kenya can be able to move to the West Africa and vice versa, so that we try and retain our wealth within Africa. Then we can be able to have a say in the world. But if we fight each other, then we allow foreigners, and by foreigners now I mean people coming from China, Japan, and Asia, and Europe and America to come and invest in Africa, and they become very successful. Then you have a case whereby you have capital flight. They invest here, but they move the money back to their countries. We cannot be able to grow. We will always be colonized, and that is why we are moving away from such. So let's try and accommodate Africans, our fellow Africans, so that we try and see how we can be able to integrate not only our culture, of course, expansions, we also look at how we can be able to integrate our businesses, so that if a company like MTN has managed to have footprints in almost so many countries, especially in West Africa, a company like Barclays is doing the same. A company like DSTV is all over, SuperSport. Let's try and do the same for these other countries. So we'll want to see East African breweries moving to almost every country in Africa, and so forth and so on, so that we can be able to be proud of being Africa, consuming Africa, growing Africa. That then we can be able to become a very powerful continent.
All right. Yes. And you know, you got me a little bit curious when we were talking about, you know, this inhumanity meted upon fellow Africans. And for a moment, I sat back to ask myself, and I'm not trying to say that this equally should be mated upon the Chinese, upon the whites that you, like you rightfully put it, or maybe the foreigners, so to speak. Because then the hand of the foreigner has actively been involved in the activities of Africa, in the resources of Africa. And my question today would be, are there no such in South Africa, such that, of course, the only thing that South Africans can see are fellow Africans to a point of, you know, getting them to this point? I mean, is China not there? Today, we're talking about trade infrastructure, top agenda as Uhuru meets a special envoy from China. So clearly, Chinese have penetrated across Africa, almost all African countries. Are they not there in South Africa?
They are. Sometimes when you're frustrated, you tend to fight the weak.
Okay.
You cannot be able to vent your anger on the strong people. That is why, if the issues that the South Africans have are really genuine, I would have expected them to go and loot a police station, you know, loot a government office, close the embassies, you know, such things, so that you can be venting your anger in the right place. But because they cannot do that to the government, they are venting their anger on weaklings. People cannot be able to defend themselves.
But wait a minute. What informs the weakness in African investors? Because then when you talk about that, it reminds me of a social contract, which China in most cases will penetrate African countries with a social contract and say, this is how we do our thing. This is how our culture is all about. And, you know, in a way, this social contract somehow protects them. Technically, we've seen countries like Tanzania having a very good social contract, such that even when you're going to invest in Tanzania, you're always told that this and this and this and this and this is what we have enshrined in, you know, in the laws of Tanzania, and you cannot bypass this. And in a way, it protects the Tanzanians themselves, and equally protects the investors who come on board, because they know what to expect or what is on ground. Do you suppose then that Africa does not have, you know, this, or maybe policies that are good enough to protect fellow Africans in the event that they go to invest in certain countries?
Even if we set policies as Africa, we'll tend to bend the laws when it comes to foreigners. And by foreigners, I mean the Chinese and the other European countries. Because of this aspect of them being very developed countries, and they're bringing in aid to the country. So we'll tend always to bend the laws so that they favor them. So when it comes to our fellow Africans, we don't care so much about them. I mean, if there was a riot today, and you have a Chinese company here and a Kenyan company here, it is there is a high likelihood that police will move to protect the Chinese entity. They won't bother about this one. And that is how the kind of influence that these countries have had in Africa. And they're doing the same in other countries. So much so that we tend not to focus on them, we tend to focus on other people. And the biggest problem is those kind of investments that probably don't fully benefit Africa. And we are not saying that people don't go looting there and chasing them. We are saying that the government should come with very stringent rules on how those countries penetrate into the country. So we don't want to expose fellow Africans to the same set of rules with these other countries.
Right.
We should have it easy, and that's why we are talking about integration as Africa, where there is ease of doing business when it comes to fellow Africans. And you know, you ensure that there is waive of taxes and all those things so that they can be able to do business cheaply. But when it comes to these foreigners, now the Chinese and the rest, you make it so stringent that they only come to fit in where you are not able to do, such business. And that is the cry that we have in Kenya right now, that you don't want someone to come 3,000 miles, that's over 7,000 kilometers, to come and sell sufurias. Yet it's something that can be done by a local. So, I mean, those are the kind of dynamics that we should be talking about Africa. Let's favor the Africans. Let's try and see how local businesses can be able to thrive within Africa. Then these countries can come and complement areas that we are not able to fully fit in, because we cannot be able to do everything. Yes.
All right. So, talking of that, reminds me of how much, of course, the government of South Africa has argued, or maybe has posed or purported to have gone an extra mile towards protecting the locals and the foreigners and their property. So much so, I was listening to some people talking, and, you know, one of them argued that, you know, this has taken me 20 years to set up whatever it is that is here. And in one day, you see it go down. Why should it take that direction? Do you suppose that the government of South Africa has been genuine in addressing these issues? Because then, if they acknowledge very well the importance of the growth of the economy and how much, of course, a role these foreigners are playing, then they would try their level best to protect this. Technically, of what I'll tell you, today President Uhuru Kenyatta would not just sit down to see us, you know, strangling some of the people who have come to invest in the country, because he knows very well that in a huge way they have contributed to the growth of the economy.
No, as South Africa, actually the problem that is in South Africa starts with its top leadership.
Yes.
Every time you listen to them talk, other than, of course, Malema, they are talking against the foreigners. Ramaphosa did the same. The former president, Zuma, it was even worse. So it's something that is inborn. That right after independence, they had a very good president called Nelson Mandela, whose interest was to bring people together. The moment he left, he handed over to people who have deep-rooted African kind of behavior, who feel like their problems are actually due to the fact that they have accommodated so many Africans in the country. And they have been trying to look for a way of removing them from the country. That is why...
the white settler.
And the settlers. So every time, you see, sometimes you listen to your leaders and you listen to what they say. They may not be saying it directly, but people pick the messages. So when a president talks about these things, he makes a very clear statement and condemns. People will take the statement that is made. So if they don't come out clearly and say, look, we are managing a country that has both natives and foreigners, and we must look for a way of living together as the people who are living in South Africa. Some of the huge investments are not South African owned, they are foreign owned, and they are benefiting the economy. So we cannot be able to start chasing them out just because we feel like they came and took over our space. So if they don't come out and condemn and speak strongly against it, nothing will happen. Even when we had issues in 2007, 2008 in the country, with the fighting that we saw in Rift Valley, it took the leaders to come out and talk about it for the people to
calm down.
To calm down. The kind of quiet kind of behavior that we saw from late 2007 to early 2008 meant that people kept on killing each other. But the moment the leaders came out and talked about it, people became calmer, and we sorted that issue. That is what the president needs to do. Address the nation and say, look, it is wrong. We must accommodate each other. Of course, it may be not something popular for him, because he will be going against what he stood for. But at the moment, he needs to calm the country, so that people can continue operating their business. Then he looks for a way of handling those issues.
My next question would have been, now the buck stops with who? The people or the government in addressing this? Then I just got to Twitter, and whatever is trending right now is hashtag South Africans, who are out there saying that we're proud to be South Africans. We do not even care if Nigerians decide to pull out, if their musicians, you know, are pulling out of the concerts. After all, we never understood their languages and all that. Sincerely speaking, don't you think it is heartbreaking and we should weep for Africa?
We should weep for Africa, and it just shows you the extent of unemployment and deep-rooted kind of hatred that we have. And the people, we have a people who've never fully benefited from their country.
Right.
And when you see the South Africans talking like that, they really feel like it's the end of them. They don't have anything else they can be able to do, because the government has not come out to tell them this is the direction. So for them, they feel, to hell, we can be able to sort out our issues. But they're not understanding the dynamics of, if they were left to sort out their issues, what will happen?
Right.
You see,
Yeah.
countries like America are where they are because they fully accepted foreigners. They also have their challenges right now, but they have looked for a way of integrating different people from different cultural backgrounds to work as a country. It's actually a country that is proud to have people from different cultures working towards developing the same nation. And I can tell you, even a Kenyan who has settled in South Africa feels proud to be in South Africa, feels proud to invest in that economy and to see the economy grow. He's not probably focused on Kenya, because that's where his investment is. If you've put in an investment of $3 or $4 million in South Africa, and you're feeding your kids, and you've employed 2 or 3,000 people, you will feel proud to be in that country and to benefit to contribute to that economy. So that is the kind of thinking that the South Africans should have. But if the kind of reactions they have is what we are seeing, it's sad. And that's why probably they're called South Africa. They're south of Africa, so Africa is the rest of us. Them, they're actually south of Africa.
Well, sad to speak. But equally, as we get to wind up, is this the best way Nigerians, Kenyans, Zambians, or the rest of Africa would have addressed this issue? Because then it's not the first time that we're also, just ranting back, or maybe banning them back, or even closing down their entities back. If we are looking for an integrated Africa, a continental free trade Africa, sincerely, is this the way to handle it?
Now, you see, we rely on our political leaders to be able to take the lead.
Right.
If we don't see that happening, then people will always want to take the law into their hands. And that's why you see the kind of reactions. And I think what Nigerians are trying to tell the South Africans is, it is not only you who have foreigners in your country. We also have foreigners, people with huge investments here. And Nigerians are not only in South Africa. Nigerians are across the world. They have taken over villages, and even in China, you will find corners which are African corners, where Africans actually stay and they do business. So it is not the right way to react. But which other option do you have as a citizen if your president or your political leadership is not taking the lead to be able to address these issues? Because if we could have an urgent AU meeting by now to discuss this issue, people will calm down and say, let's wait and see the direction that the AU takes. But if people are quiet and they don't care about 20 or 30 people who have lost their lives, then you will say, fine, let's take the law to our hands. Let's also show them that they have actually invested here, which is the wrong approach, but it's just a desperate way of sending a message that you guys don't throw stones when you're living in a glass house. That is the message. Yes.
All right, whatever the reaction, I think we technically say that we condemn xenophobic attacks, and we say this is not right and should not be ongoing. Africans should be Africans and should embrace each other. And also what you say, at the end of the day, sometimes when you come up with this, the damage will always be done unto you. I remember what happened during the post-election violence, and we used to argue, why should you start the fights against, the other people? Because at the end of the day, it's your shops that are going to be closed. At the end of the day, it's your glass house that is going to be hit by that stone, and the glass will come crumbling down. So if you are wise enough, then this is not the direction to take. And I'm afraid that indeed now our leaders need to come out boldly and address this, because the rate at which it's going is not going to be anything good for African integration. African Union is, of course, the buck stops with them to address these key issues, because then they are the umbrella body of Africa. But then we can only hope that this does not escalate to a point where we would not be able to address this. Thank you so much, CPA Enoch Monari, of course, for that extension of time equally, and most importantly for the great insights that we've brought about. So much to speak about the effects of xenophobia, more so on the economic, angle, or even, of course, just peaceful coexistence for Africa, and equally just taking a look at the events of the county right here in the country. It has to start from home, by the way. If you don't fix your home, then this will definitely escalate to the rest of the continent, which should not be it. We say thank you so much also for keeping us company right from the word go up until now. My name is Linda Alele. It was good having you. We'll see you again tomorrow as we usher in the weekend in a great way. Thank you.